Brendan Keefe joins us now live from Mandeville, just outside of New Orleans. Brendan?
Roz, today we drove across the causeway here, across Lake Pontchartrain into New Orleans, a city that is displaying the very best and very worst of human existence. You know, we've been seeing the property destruction along the Louisiana coastline for the last few days, but today we witnessed firsthand the human devastation.
Nice and easy. There you go.
An endless sea of people making their way to dry land any way they can.
They had to take my mother away yesterday because she was on her last oxygen tank. And so some men came and rescued her from the hotel. And I don't know where she is.
Thousands are still trapped in New Orleans, many of them very young and the very old. Those unable to get out before or after the floods, waiting 5 days now to be rescued.
Last night my husband came to me after our daughter went to sleep and he told me, I think we're gonna die here. And I told him, no, we can't die here.
This is U.S. Highway 61, known locally here in New Orleans as Airline Drive. Like much of this city, it remains underwater 5 days after Hurricane Katrina hit this city. And those left behind who are regretting their decision either couldn't get out or chose to stay. This baby girl was born just hours before Katrina slammed into New Orleans. As the newborn sweats under the Louisiana sun, her mother cradles 5-day-old Cortesia, faded maternity bracelets still clinging to her wrist.
They have mothers in there ready to deliver.
Now this mother is trying to get back into the city with her newborn in a desperate attempt to get to her 2 older children still trapped in a New Orleans apartment complex. The horrors of the hospital still fresh in her mind.
The babies that are in intensive care, they didn't even have electricity for oxygen machines. The generators went under the water. Yeah, they need to evacuate that hospital quick. They had 2 patients died already.
We are supposed to remain completely objective, but how do you take the pictures and not lend a hand? This is not a war, it's a disaster, and there's only one side of this story: humanity. A number of reporters have broken down on camera, and I now see why. The images I witnessed today will truly haunt me for the rest of my life, I can say that, but it must be much more difficult for the people who've lived through this, and they are the lucky ones. We're live in Mandeville, Louisiana. Brendan Keefe, CBS 2 News. Roz.
Brendan,
Mary.
before you go, you know, just when I think I have seen it all, you show me a woman with a 5-day-old baby who doesn't know where her other children are. These horror stories are never ending.
That's exactly it, Roz. It's very difficult. We wanted to literally grab the baby, get the mother, put them in the truck, and drive them. But where? This is the problem. And for every person like that, there are another 10 more in the apartment building or hospital where she came from. And so that's the amazing thing. You know, this, although difficult to witness, is easy journalism. And what I mean to say is we simply show up, and everyone, every single person who got off that boat had an amazing story of survival and a heartbreaking story of the last 5 days. It's very difficult, and I think it's going to be tough for everyone who survived, and certainly those of us who are here witnessing it.
Brendan, thank you very much. And needless to say, we'll be hearing from you over the next several days. Thanks.
Take a look at the roadway down there. This was done by the storm surge as it came in. When Hurricane Katrina was coming into the area, it ripped apart this bridge. That is going to take not days, not weeks, try months or even years to repair. And this is one of a couple of bridges heading into New Orleans that are all but completely destroyed. The damage to the marina would also have been caused by that storm surge, a 20 to 25-foot wall of water. It was actually predicted. People were warned this was coming in, and that's what's so heartbreaking in this story is a lot of people decided to stay in their homes, stay in New Orleans, and ride it out, and those people are paying a terrible price for that decision. 5 days, 6 days waiting to be rescued, and still waiting for things like food and water, basic necessities, and obviously many have not survived. And then you look at the property damage here. We're talking about the human cost, of course. Thousands of people in the storm's path still trying to get out, still trying to get help. When you look at the property damage, however, you realize that there's some $20 to $25 billion in insured losses, and a lot of them didn't have flood insurance, and they're going to be paying dearly for that. A lot of them will be paying mortgages or defaulting on mortgages for homes that no longer exist. When you look at that pile of lumber, those were homes those were buildings. It's not just one house, it's not two, entire neighborhoods. One storm is not going to be the end of a place like New Orleans or an end of these coastal communities. They're going to survive this, but this is not a typical storm, a Category 1, Category 2, Category 3 storm. It's a Category 4 that's hitting a major metropolitan area, and that is going to take a tremendous amount of time to recover from. Up here in the air, when you look down and see the devastation, you can see just how widespread it is, but that's property damage. To understand the human devastation, you have to get down to ground level, where you talk to the survivors of Hurricane Katrina. The rescue mission is its own double tragedy. Help that came too late, and survivors who still refuse to evacuate New Orleans.
The question is, what took so long? These people have been suffering out here since the storm ended at Monday night. They've been trying to get out of here.
This lady that's coming in the boat with my husband, I hope, is 80 years old and has 3 cats. And those are like her children. She's had them forever, and she would not leave those cats.
Okay, one side, put theirs down.
The Coast Guard and other rescuers must navigate flooded streets littered with abandoned ambulances. This water is truly foul, reeking of human waste and the smell of death. Originally, the concern was about wind and flooding, then a lack of food and water. Now there is a serious health concern in the city of New Orleans. Rescuers carry protection against all threats, masks and gloves for disease, vests and guns against attack.
All right, give me 3 people. Right now, we're going to drop them off and come back.
No, we ain't leaving.
What?
Water ain't going down for 2 months.
You leaving?
No, we ain't leaving.
Cars parked everywhere show many people had the means to get out before the hurricane hit, but chose to ignore the mandatory evacuation order. Now they have no choices left.
You coming with me?
I'm an adult. You can't make me come with you.
What?
I'm an adult.
I can, huh? I'm going to handcuff you. You're not. I'm taking your child.
No, you can't take my child.
You're not staying here.
We ain't leaving.
You're going to die here. Let's go.
I'm waiting for my mama.
We're going to bring you to your mama.
With your mother.
If I got to get out of this boat, drag you in here, you coming. You're going to die here. Get in the boat.
Most of New Orleans is in the same boat, frightened to leave home, terrified to stay. In New Orleans, Brendan Keefe, CBS 2 News.
The recovery efforts are picking up steam with more help on the way.
But for some of the victims, hope is fading and fast. Our coverage begins tonight with CBS 2's Brendan Keefe. He's live in Mandeville, Louisiana, just outside New Orleans. Brendan?
Today we're at the New Orleans Convention Center, where those supplies delivered something that had been running in very short supply. Hope.
They're all going to the same location. Y'all are not going to get separated.
The tide has finally turned.
4 people. 4 people together.
National Guard troops moved into New Orleans and began moving people out.
People have been really patient. A lot of rumors have been going out, but for the most part, a lot of good people just in a bad situation.
Some of these soldiers just returned from Iraq after a year-long tour of duty in Baghdad.
As tough as things were in Baghdad, the living conditions there were better than what you see in New Orleans right now.
Indeed, even those of us who are veteran war correspondents are shocked by the conditions of human suffering. But ask these people who were trapped in the convention center for nearly a week, and they'll tell you, today is a beautiful day.
It's beautiful. It was a disaster and something I never seen in my life, and I'm 46 years old, and now it is beautiful. It's a blessing now.
Survivors are counting those blessings. An extended family of 30 used their shoelaces to string the little kids together.
Sorry, man. Stop crying.
Not one was lost in the storm or its devastating aftermath. Even the sick and the elderly are finally getting wheeled out. That will leave New Orleans, the city of the dead.
And the worst of it, yes, there are some bodies, and they are piling up in the city, and there's no place to put them.
Call this the first sign of recovery. A woman who endured the horrors of the convention center cleaning up the streets of New Orleans.
I'm not a refugee. I am a United States citizen, okay?
They're exhausted, they're tired, they're hungry, they're thirsty, but they have not lost their spirit. The spirit of the people of Louisiana, of New Orleans, has not been broken. These people are very resilient. These are the survivors. Also, we can tell you that 7,000 more troops have been activated and are on their way to the area. It appears the criticism of both federal and state officials by the people has had the desired effect. More supplies, more troops on the way, but they are going to find an empty New Orleans. Some say it is too little, too late. We are live in Mandeville, Louisiana. Brendan Keefe, CBS 2 News. Michael, Mary.
Live team coverage begins tonight with a part of this story you will not see anywhere else. A New Orleans police officer nearly made the ultimate sacrifice as lawlessness and anarchy took hold of the city last week. CBS 2's Brendan Keefe and Lou Young are just outside New Orleans. We're going to begin with Brendan, who spoke with that officer exclusively tonight. Brendan?
Jim, the New Orleans Police Department is a microcosm of this disaster. Stories of heroism with cops staying on around the clock to save others, other officers turning in their shields, and of course the 2 police suicides. But tonight, the story of a 16-year veteran, a bedside interview with a man trying to stop looters, shot in the head.
It was sad, it's like you was out there by yourself. You had nobody out there with you. You're out there all by yourself.
Police officer Kevin Thomas confronted a gang of looters the day New Orleans flooded. He had no idea one of the men was packing a .45 caliber handgun.
Go ahead, break in the store. The police right here. You still want to break in the store.
He was shot point blank in the head during a struggle with the looter.
I definitely remember being shot for nothing.
He had a gunshot wound that entered just behind his ear and exited in the front.
When Officer Thomas was brought here to a trauma room at West Jefferson Medical Center, his vitals were already dropping. The normal protocol would be to order up an immediate CAT scan to track the path of the bullet through his brain. But remember, the hurricane had knocked the power out, and the hospital was operating on a backup generator.
My partner, under just dire conditions on generator power, all we had available here were x-rays.
The 2-dimensional images showed a potentially fatal wound.
You can see the skull fracture here, extends here, and the hole in his head where the bullet went through. And this is some fragments of bone and metal that's in his head, so the bullet passed right through the side of his brain.
As the battle in New Orleans raged around them, brain surgeons fought to save the wounded officer's life.
Got some police out there think I'm dead right now. Some police don't even know what happened.
Because of his amazing recovery, early reports suggested Officer Thomas was only grazed by the .45 caliber bullet.
Look at my head. Does this seem like a bullet that went inside somebody's skull?
The officer is doing very well. He is expected to make a full recovery, but he says he will not be going back to the NOPD even with rehabilitation. The mayor and the police chief never visited the officer here at the hospital, and also a suspect has been caught. In fact, that suspect also had a bullet wound. Police say that was self-inflicted during the struggle for the gun. The officer never got his own weapon out of the holster. We're live in West Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. Brendan Keefe, CBS 2 News. Dana? To give you an idea of the lawlessness in downtown New Orleans, take a look at this particular example right in front of the convention center. This is a New Orleans City Police Department car, completely looted and smashed. Check out, you've got the inside here. The door panel's been removed. They tried to get the speakers. The windows smashed, and there even the stereo was ripped out of a police car right in downtown New Orleans. So this is the kind of thing cops were dealing with. They even took the wheels off the car in this kind of desperation. Now, it's not just desperation for food, desperation for water. We saw that, of course, and that can be understood. But a small element of downtown New Orleans was completely out of control, with people stealing things like TVs and looting these police cars, seen really as a symbol of the government. Here at the convention center, 3,000 to 5,000 people were staged here for days because police told them this is where to go. You can see the NYPD, there's the 61st Precinct, Highway 5 pulling through. These guys are here trying to help restore order. But imagine now when it was just the NOPD, the New Orleans Police Department, with all of these people here left with really no organization, no food, no water. They were told to come here by officials who didn't know that the actual evacuation point was the Superdome. They thought this was also an official evacuation point. It wasn't. So very difficult time here for these people, and they felt like refugees. That's a really loaded word that's been tossed around lately. They felt like refugees, but what they really are is survivors. New Orleans says they'll rebuild, and just like New York after September 11th, even though they feel like they're at the depths, there is a glimmer of hope that someday this great city will return to its former glory. In New Orleans, Brendan Keefe, WCBS TV.
Brendan Keefe is in New Orleans, and Aline Sergani is in Biloxi, Mississippi. Let's begin with you, Brendan.
Jim, New Orleans right now is under a mandatory evacuation order. That may sound like a broken record message. That mandatory evacuation order essentially has been in place since the Sunday before the hurricane hit, so over a week and a half ago, nearly 2 weeks. But now they really mean it. I mean, the mayor has given them the authority to actually use force to remove people. But the folks who came back to see their homes on the west side of New Orleans today found something they'd been missing for some time: hope. Rescuers are still trying to save lives, no matter how small. The SPCA saved this cat from a flooded house.
You made it. I told him you'd be all right.
Hey, Angel. He's going home.
We've got it in a cage. Your cat's all right.
Okay, Angel, look.
Small miracles restoring hope. This one, a cat named Angel.
Oh, my goodness.
Fantastic. You're most welcome. Denise Thornton is crying for her children who were forced to evacuate nearly 2 weeks ago without their pet. They left food and hoped for the best.
Each day that went by, we thought, she's getting weak and tired and hungry. And I forgot about the toilets until he told me today that she'd probably be drinking out of the toilets.
Hope is filling the spaces left behind by receding floodwaters. Helicopters carrying massive sandbags have helped plug holes in the broken levees. With the breach in the 17th Street levee repaired, any pumps that are working are operating at full blast, and the water level is dropping a few inches a day. Returning residents with flooded homes on the other side are using this railroad bridge to save what they can.
It's going to take a long time, but this city's coming back.
George and Carol Byram are trying to save their lifetime collection of original artwork. Their house had 18 inches of water, far less than the flooded neighbors.
I couldn't believe it. It's heartbreaking. But, I know they'll come back. I know that everybody will rebuild.
We lost everything, but you know what? It's about the people and the stuff. It's just stuff.
Also, Dick Cheney literally just took off. I'm watching Marine 2 take off into the sky. He just took off from about 200 feet from where I'm standing after surveying the damage. The government trying to put a lot of resources in after all the criticism about a slow response. We're live in New Orleans. Brendan Keefe, CBS 2 News. Dana?
Brendan, we'll start with you. Good evening.
Good evening, Dana and Jim. 130 additional members of the NYPD arrived today, everything from patrol officers up to a chief. And now 300 NYPD officers are helping protect Greater New Orleans. The NYPD is patrolling a ghost town, a devastated city of 500,000 people, most of them now gone. These for a few days were some very mean streets. What's your analysis of them now?
Well, we were down here last night and the night before, and it's better than it has been the past couple of nights.
Officers and commanders from New York are patrolling the deserted streets of the French Quarter, setting up shop on Bourbon and Orleans in front of the only open bar in the city. It's got to be eerie or just weird standing on Bourbon Street and actively patrolling for the NYPD.
It's something I never thought I'd be doing in this uniform.
The French Quarter tonight is essentially an entirely new precinct of the NYPD with hundreds of officers and patrol cars keeping the streets safe. And the locals, they couldn't be happier.
It's surreal, but this whole thing has been surreal, man. If I could tell you the stuff that we've seen in the last week and a half, it would blow anybody's mind.
It's also reassuring.
It's reassuring, it's lovely is what it is.
If anybody's an expert at dealing with mass destruction, these guys are probably as expert as anybody is.
The New York cops are here to help fellow officers from the exhausted New Orleans Police Department. Those roles were reversed 4 years ago.
The NYPD right away had 2,000 cops step up without question, saying that they wanted to get down here and help without asking any questions. And I think that speaks volumes about what the cops in New York City are like.
You've seen the pictures. The devastation is widespread and immense, but progress is being made. A few lights can be seen on the horizon in New Orleans there in the skyline, but most buildings remain dark and the city, 70% of it, remains underwater at this time. As that water level drops and the lights come on, it reveals just more devastation and more death.